Hello everybody, welcome back. My name is Mel and today we're going to be talking about my June wrap-up. If you notice anything a little bit different, it's because I have actually gotten a new camera, so bear with me while I'm working out all of the kinks as far as the lighting and the sound and all of that stuff. So it's going to take me a little time, but we'll get there. So I feel like the month of June was a little bit cursed. It was not a great month for me. I did not read very many books. I only read 9 books, and usually I read a little closer to like 12 or 15 in a month. I also just had a crappy reading month. I picked all the wrong books. I only had one 4-star read, and that was the first read of the month, and then every read after that just went downhill from there. So let's talk about what I read in the month of June and hope that this is my last negative video for a while and July is a rock star of a month. So the first book that I want to talk about is Cibola Burn by James S.A. Corey. This is the 4th book in the Expanse series following a group of, I don't know what you really want to call them, but this is a modern classic space opera about a group that is thrust into the middle of a mystery and has to figure out what this thing that is starting to take over a lot of the worlds and satellites actually is and who's controlling it. And I really enjoyed the first couple of books in this series. So far, my favorite has been Caliban's War, followed by Cibola Burn, then Leviathan Wakes, and then Abaddon's Gate. I'm buddy reading this with Rachel from Argent Reeve and my dad, and so far they feel pretty similarly. Dad is standing on a hill that watching the show along with this really is helping his enjoyment, and I tend to agree just because Rachel and I haven't seen it, and while we're really enjoying it, we're rating them 4 stars where he's rating them 5. So I just wonder, I do plan to watch the series, but it'll probably be after I finish because I just don't want it to taint the visuals that I have of these characters. Next up, we have our first dud of the month, and that was Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson. I read this for my Reading My Dad's Favorite Books for Father's Day vlog, and this one I think is what started the month off just not great. I didn't think I was going to love this one, but I was hoping that I would give it at least like a 3.5 or 4 star, but sadly it ended up being a 2.5 star read. I don't really know how to describe what this book is about. I know I just read it, but it's a very complicated political fantasy with multiple points of view, lots of jumping around from different characters in different places, and the political intricacies that go along with that. I think that this book didn't work for me for a couple of different reasons. It has a very pretentious writing style, and 2, a lot of the world building is done in dialogue, which is just not something that I typically like, period. But the dialogue is very stilted in this book, and so no matter what, it didn't work for me. So I think that I may give the second book in the series a try. Dad did say that he seems kind of all over the place in this one and really kind of narrows it down as the series goes on. And the next book follows a different set of characters in a different part of the world. So maybe I'll like those characters better. I don't know. But this one just did not do it for me. Next up, we have 9 Princes in Amber by Rob Zucker. This is a fantasy series where the books are all really short and they kind of pile on top of each other. It's about our main character who wakes up in a hospital and he's told he cannot leave. He doesn't know who he is, what his name is, where he's from, anything that's going on. He just knows that he's miraculously a lot better than he was supposed to be, and he sets off trying to figure out who he is and what role he plays in this world. And come to find out, he is one of the 9 princes of this realm called Amber, and everything else is just like a shadow of this great city. I gave this one a low 3 star. I could be persuaded to knock it down to more like a 2.5. I just never really got invested in it. I felt like it was supposed to be this grand world and there was no world building. It jumped all over the place. The amnesia thing was entirely unnecessary and just kind of aggravated me a little bit because I didn't feel like we needed it. But as a general rule, I mean, it wasn't a bad book. It was a quick read. It just, I don't think wasn't the read for me. I read a very teeny tiny little bit of The Lies of Locke Lamora and ended up deciding to put it down. I just could not do another slow fantasy at the moment. So I'll go back to that one later. I really did not read enough of it to even truly count it as a DNF because I think I read like 10% of that and just decided not the right time. So that one I put down and moved on to Traitor's Blade by Sebastian de Castell. This one I read specifically for Whatever-a-thon, the host fave prompt, because this is Jade from Jady Rae Reed's favorite book, or favorite series of all time. I actually think the second book is her favorite book of all time. And I liked it. I had a good time with it. The beginning I did not like as much. So this follows a group of greatcoats who were in service to the king, but when the king was murdered, they lost their job, essentially. And I liked the beginning of this, but I just felt like I couldn't see the direction. I didn't know where it was headed. And while the characters were interesting, I needed a little bit more drive and substance. But then when we got about halfway through, 60% of the way through, the plot really started to pick up. I felt a lot more engaged with the characters and what was going on. I saw the brutality that everybody kept mentioning. And so I became a lot more interested in the story, and I'm very much so looking forward to book 2. I think I gave this one a middle-of-the-road 3-star read, leaning toward a 3.5. It was decent. Then, one that is going to end up on my most disappointing books of the year, and that is City of Dusk by Tara Sim. This is the first in a new, what we thought was political fantasy series. We chose this one for the unofficial official book club for the late night crew because we all had really high hopes for it. We thought it was going to be this political fantasy involving gods and necromancy and shadow magic, and I guess technically it has all of that in it, but it just tries to do way too much, and it doesn't do anything successfully because of that. It reads extremely YA. Whoever marketed this and tried to say that it was adult missed the mark a little bit. I do think this is Tara Sim kind of bridge from YA to adult, and she was trying to do a lot of the intricate high fantasy adult themes, but still with a YA writing style, and the two just didn't really go together for me. There was a lot in this book that made absolutely no sense, and unfortunately, because there was so much going on, there wasn't time to make anything make sense. There was plot twist after plot twist after plot twist after plot twist, trying to cram everything into one book, and all of the very interesting things that we could have had fell by the wayside because of it. So I actually ended up giving this one a 1.5 star. It's my first 1 star of the year. It just was not the book for me. Then we moved on to something a little bit different, and that is Bloody Heart by Sophie Lark. This is the 4th book in the Brutal Birthright series. I've enjoyed this series up to this point. They're a good time, they're easy reads, and I was looking forward to Dante's point of view. Dante is the oldest sibling of the Italian mafia, and it's his job to kind of be the strong arm, to make a lot of the decisions, to follow up on all of the family affairs. And we have a past and present point of view in this book, and they don't flip back and forth. The first half or so of this book is devoted to the past, and the latter half is devoted to the present, which I thought was an interesting way to do it. I really didn't like the past point of view. I felt like it was overly dramatic, so much teenage angst and drama, and not overly well written, and a lot of the things that the characters did I just didn't buy because I don't know, the motivations weren't there. It just really wasn't something that I would believe anyone actually doing or saying. But in the second half of the book, we got rid of a little bit of the teenage angst and just got into the brooding Dante that I really enjoyed reading about, and I liked the second half a lot better. Now, this book does something that I don't particularly love, and so I'm going to put a little bit of a spoiler tag down here in case you just really don't want to know anything about the book. But it does the secret baby trope, and I want to say that it does it well, but I just don't know that it does. And on top of that, once we get to the established couple relationship, they're like, let's make a baby. And there's a very graphic sex about how the sex is going to be making a baby. And it's just gross. It did not work for me. I didn't love it. I didn't understand it. And yeah, I don't know. This one ended up getting a low 3-star from me because of that. I had really high hopes for it because I liked Dante's character a lot and I liked the female lead, but that part just didn't work for me and it drug it way down. Then moving on to Reliquary, which is the second in the Pendergast series by Preston and Child. I really enjoyed Relic. I read it in the month of May. It was a super fast read, and so I was excited to just kind of break it up and get that summer thriller in for whatever-a-thon. Sadly, this was just a worse version of the first book. It wasn't a whole lot new. The formula was exactly the same, and I didn't really have a good time with this one. I ended up giving it a 2-star. This particular one follows the same group of characters. Something happens and a body shows up, and there's something weird about the body, so the scientists get involved, and then Pendergast comes in to be the FBI agent to try to save the day. it just didn't work. I was very, very bored, unlike Relic, where I was very entertained. Even if it really didn't make a whole lot of sense, I was entertained. This one, I was just bored throughout most of the book, and I wanted it to be over as fast as possible. So unfortunately, this one gets a 2.5 star for me. But I will be continuing because I did enjoy the first book, and I've heard that the further on you get, the more it follows Pendergast, and I'm hoping it'll break that formula just a little bit. Then we have one that it's another one that I just don't want to talk about because I was so disappointed, and that's House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This is the 5th book by Riley Sager, I think. And I've liked a couple of his books. Bobby from Bobby Reads will tell you he's trash, just straight across the board trash. And I have fun with Riley Sager books. I really liked Lock Every Door. I really liked Home Before Dark. Last Time I Lied was pretty good, but I didn't feel like Survive the Night or Final Girls was all that great. And so I was hoping that he would really step up, hit the punch, and do something great with this one. Unfortunately, it didn't work. There was a particular element in this book that he tried to accomplish that he was not successful in, and it drew me completely out of the story because of how illogical it was. And then we kept on with the illogic even after the reveal. This one follows our main character, who is a film star, and when her husband dies and she goes into a stupor, drinking herself away, they banish her to the family's lake house so that she won't embarrass herself any further. She sees a woman drowning in the lake and goes to save her, and finds out that it is the model that has moved in with her husband across the lake, and there's some fishy stuff going on. There are other books that do the twist in this series much better. I'm not going to tell you what books because that will spoil the twist, but it was not the book for me. I ended up giving this one a 2.5 star. Probably the reason it didn't get a 1.5 or a 2 star was because I do like Riley Sager's writing style. It's very easy to read, and even though I was bored, I still wanted to continue reading, if that makes any sense. So that's what saved it to a 2.5 star, but I was just very, very disappointed in one of my most anticipated thrillers of the year. And then on to another one that I DNF'd, and this is a soft DNF. I probably will go back to this book at some point, and that's The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wang. This is a indie published high fantasy about a mom and a son. It follows both points of view. The son, who is in this training academy learning how to make water magic and deal with his water magic, and then his mom, whose entire purpose in life is now to just spit out babies and raise her sons, but she has a past and she would like to be her own person. There is a war brewing, there's a discussion on propaganda, so I can really see where this would be a good book, but the writing style was more detached for me, a lot more dense, and so I wasn't getting invested in the characters, and because of that, I didn't really want to keep reading. And I think that if you're not a super character-driven reader, this might be a problem for you. I will probably pick it back up in the future, but I just didn't want to continue reading it when I wasn't in the mood for that character-driven of a story and then end up giving it a maximum of 3 stars because it wasn't the book that I was looking for at the time. All right, and last but not least, one that I'm only going to give you very brief thoughts about because there will be a live show on this, and that is The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. This is the first book in the Winnowing trilogy, I believe. I can't remember exactly, but this is the Backlist Book Club hosted by Covers with Cassidy's book club pick for the month of June, July, and August. She has kindly asked me to be a co-host, and so I read this in June. This is a very interesting book that follows almost vampires, and their world was invaded by an alien race. The alien race killed their god, and because of that, they then had to feed on the blood of humans, and there has been a war and a dying civilization ever since then. This had some really interesting ideas. I liked the juxtaposition between the sci-fi and the fantasy elements. And I think the fantasy elements and the horror elements would have been really, really cool if we'd focused on them a little bit more. But again, this book has that kind of detached writing style. And it does one thing that I have learned that I absolutely hate in books, and that is traveling for the sake of traveling. I don't mind traveling to get from point A to point B to further a plot. I don't really love it when a book just skips over all of the travel, but there has to be a point to the travel. It can't just be for the sake of it. And this book does it just for the sake of it in a lot of parts, and it drove me insane. It caused me to be a lot more bored than I anticipated being. So unfortunately, I don't know how I feel about this one. I'm really going to need to talk it out on the live show to figure out where I settle here. I'm not sure how Cassidy's gonna feel about it. She's either gonna give it a 1 star or maybe a 4 star, but it just depends on how much some of the things that bugged me bug her. So we shall see. But yeah, tune into that live show on July 10th to hear all of our spoilery thoughts. Okay, so I think that concludes my June wrap up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Sorry for being such a negative Nancy this month. I'm convinced that July is going to be my month and it's going to save the day. I've already started a book that I'm really, really enjoying, so hopefully, fingers crossed, that will be the case. Let me know down in the comments what was your favorite read of the month, or if you had a cursed June as well. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe if you want it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!